Now. All right, we are good. So I am so excited to kick off this series. This has been something that well, first of all, my name is Sheila. If I haven't met you all here, my name is Sheila Weaver. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm the program manager for the Family Caregiver Navigator program at the Idaho Caregiver Alliance. And I am so excited to see a room full of interested people today showing up for kinship. And I'm just really honored to be here among so many great people today. This kinship project, we've been talking about this at the Idaho Caregiver Alliance for quite some time. And we are so excited and grateful to finally see it come to life. Um, Many people on our team have been impacted by kinship caregiving, including myself. I was raised by my grandparents. So if there's anything you even remotely like about me, it's probably because of my grandparents. They were a tremendous influence in my life. So we're so fortunate today that we have wonderful partners that have helped this work come to life today through Cambia Healthcare, United Healthcare of Idaho and Molina Healthcare. So thank you to all of our partners that were able to make this happen today. And we're so excited to kick off. This is the first in a series of 6 monthly sessions on kinship caregiving. So we are so excited. You'll get more information on that. And I'm also so thrilled to have a partner alongside in this, Michelle Bass, LCSW. She is an expert in our community on trauma-informed caregiving, and has worked with families for years. And I will let Michelle introduce herself a little more. But again, I'm so excited to have you all here today and Michelle here today. And I'll leave it to Michelle.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sheila, and welcome everyone. Okay. I can see the conference room in Boise at Casey Family Programs. Shout out to all of you having a watch party. That's amazing. And then all of the wonderful families that are joined today. Yes, my name's Michelle Bass, as Sheila said. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I have been working with families for well, as a social worker over 14 years, but actually 15 years. Okay, it started that up. And before that, I worked with families, but with younger kids. And I absolutely love trauma-informed parenting and that approach, understanding the why behind the behavior. And another thing about me is in 2018, I became a trust-based relational intervention practitioner. And so I have that as a part of all of my training as well. And so I'm just really super excited to spend this time with you. Our day today is going to be split into two parts. So I will say one of the reasons why we wanted to know what types of caregivers we have is because we want to know, some when we're talking about trauma, it can bring up some things for folks that are listening, whether it's realizing your own trauma, and or if you're, let's say, like a grandparent, you may hold some feelings about the fact that maybe certain things that maybe happen to your grandchild. If you feel at all any kind of feelings of responsibility or shame or guilt, I want you to just recognize that this is not a place where we are looking at like what was done, like what could have been better, that kind of thing. What we're doing today is really just trying to understand trauma. And I will say one thing. We all have been through some things together. The pandemic is one, and we can use that as an example of just how that was a traumatic event that impacted all of us. So when we look at trauma, let's look at it as a shared experience. Yes, there's going to be differences with the kids that we're talking about and the families, but really at the end of the day, we're looking at what really does this all mean? And then what can we do in our approach to help with the kids that we love so much? So, this first part, I really want you to be mindful of taking care of yourself. I have my water with me. Make sure you have something to drink. I know folks probably over at Casey have some food and snacks, but just make sure you have something to take care of yourself. If you need to stand up, whatever you need to do. I am going to try to have time for us to be able to have questions. Unfortunately, there are some limitations with today with our time, and part of that is just we're not going to be able to virtually be able to ask questions, but you can certainly put questions into the oh wait, I want to stop sharing just really quick. I think I forgot to press a button that Sheila had reminded me that I needed to press, and I did it without doing it. But look, I remembered. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Okay. So Sheila is going to be keeping track of the PowerPoint for me because I will not be able to see it. Whoops. Let me try that again. Okay. All right. So if you have any questions, there's going to be some things where we're going to need to, I'll ask some questions of you, but let's go ahead and get started. So, let's talk about how we're going to be together today. Again, make sure that you're muted, but please really use the chat if you'd like, because we'll be asking some different questions. It's easy in these kinds of trainings to kind of get distracted, and I would just encourage you to be present. And if you need to step away, absolutely do that. Take care of yourself. We will definitely have moments where we will practice some of the things just for yourself of taking care of self. So we did ask before we got started the poll is not working, but if you haven't yet, please put in the chat what type of kids what your role is in caregiving. So we might have grandparents or aunts and uncles, cousins, mentors, friends, siblings. You may be a parent, biological parent, adoptive. I mean, one of the things, there's like all sorts of different types of parenting. So go ahead and put that in. Sheila, are there any new ones out there that we could shout out really quick?
We're hearing from uncles and we're hearing from uncles, mainly grandparents, parents, and then uncles, cousins. So, but I would say majority parents and grandparents.
Okay, perfect. All right.
But a good mix. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Okay, so let's just talk about what we're going to be going over today. So we're really going to try to understand what trauma is, how it impacts brain development, and this is really going to be an overview. I am not a brain scientist. We are not going to go deep, but just enough for you to understand. The stress response system, we all have it, we all use it, and sometimes it gets in the way, but it also saves our lives. So we need it. Impacts on the body, so our sensory systems, and then beliefs about ourself and identity. There's also like how our body reacts to trauma. So many different things we have impact. So this is something that we're going to work on. And then hopefully we'll get to that all in the first part. And then in the second part, we'll talk about, well, what can we do about it? Like 5 protective factors. I'm going to do a quick introduction to TBRI. So it's going to be an overview, but we will definitely along the way talk about different things that we can do, that you can do in the moment. But first we have to understand the why, which is kind of my approach to everything that I do when it comes to helping caregivers, is really understanding what's going on, to normalize it. Also, one of the things I would encourage you to do is also think about your own response to stress. because you as the caregiver have, it's going to be really important that you understand this about yourself as well as the children that you're working with and that you love. And the other thing we're going to do is this is this beginning of an amazing training series that we're going to be providing for the next few months. And so we're going to introduce that at the end of this training to tell you about all the things to look forward to. And we definitely want to hear from you as well. So, all right. So when we think about trauma, what do you think? And go ahead and put this in the chat if you would like. What do you think trauma is when you think of trauma? And Sheila, if you could, if there are some things, if you could just share a few of them that maybe stand out to you.
Sure, I am looking. I'm kind of still watching and looking right now. So, just something kind of out of the ordinary happening is kind of what we're hearing. Anxiety, an overwhelming negative experience, either one time or long term. Trauma can really stem around historical trauma around families. Very good point. A response to
Mm-hmm.
specific event or events, um, a non-positive life change, abandonment.
Okay. Yeah. So lots of things that trauma can be. So let's look at what the definition of trauma is. Trauma is defined as a deeply distressing or disturbing experience, one like a physical injury. So trauma is the Greek word for wound. Although the Greeks use the term only for physical injuries, nowadays trauma is used as likely to refer to emotional wounds. And a lot of these we hold on to. Um, and they can show up like physical, could be like sleep difficulties, mental, anxiety, depression, social, could show up as isolation, spiritual, questioning your sense of purpose, cognitive, could have impact on your learning and how you see yourself. So there's a lot of power behind trauma. And I will say, you know what, I love the little teddy bear here and the wound. With TBRI, one of the things that we do a lot is talking about the wounds we don't see. And, when you see someone has an injury, it's easy to see, oh, they're hurting. But one of the things that happens a lot with trauma is it's wounds that we don't see, but they have big impact. So let's go further on this. Is the pacing okay for everyone? How we're doing?
Yep, let us know if it's not in the chat. I'm not hearing everything
Okay.
good so far. So, yep, good to go.
Okay, I am trying to because we started a little bit later, trying to make sure I get everything in, but I want to make sure it's a good pacing for everyone. So, looking at risk factors, there's lots of different factors. Some of them like prenatal risk. So some of them can be drug exposure, stressful pregnancy. My baby, my last one tried to come out super early. So I was on, well, instead of bed rest, because I couldn't go that far, we called it butt rest, but it was very stressful. And, I know that I was stressed throughout. And so some of the hormones that, I was, had impact on baby. There's like complications in birth, hospitalizations, NICU experiences, things that, that are out of our control as well. Maltreatment, neglect, system effects like poverty, homelessness, discrimination, multiple fosters or residential placements. So that has impact as well. Natural man-made traumas such as war, pandemic. So car accidents, so many different things. And when we look at trauma, it has different impacts. So I'm going to take, for instance, of the pandemic, because I think that's a universal thing that we have all experienced. So individually, how did that impact you? So I can use me as an example. I was lucky to work for an organization where I still had my job, but I had to stay home. And I'm a very people person. And so it had an impact on me socially because I was suddenly went from being very social with people to having to do it through a screen. And there were certain costs to my regulation and my ability to cope with that. I noticed my anxiety was higher, and I don't know if you all can think about what the impact was for you individually. Maybe you lost someone. I had members of my family that didn't make it through COVID. There were other things, moving on to family. There were certain life events that happened that I wasn't able to go to because of all of the protocols that were in place to keep everyone safe. So we had our first grandchild was born. My dad had heart surgery, and like some of those things. So think about the impact on your family and how even trying to you were home a lot more with each other, and or there was a shared feeling of maybe the unknown and some stress. Then communities, think about the community that you live in, and the impact that that had on your community. I'm thinking about some of the reactions. Think about, it seems so long ago. Do you remember when toilet paper was hard to find? And like how the community, like some folks really came in and like were really supportive. Others they were really in survival mode. So understanding that impact on community, and then globally, think about how it impacted the entire world. People, and how there was a lot of based on that, recovery. And then when you think about all of that in the moment, then think about when we started to go back to normal. I noticed driving was different. People, me who was really outgoing, I was not a hugger when I came out. I noticed that I jumped more when people came by. I people were it was just different, and it took a while. And in some regards, I don't think, I work right now in behavioral health. I'm a therapist for many, many different age groups, and I will say that it has impacted socially. It has impacted kids in school, and their ability to learn, and and a lot of families. Like, it has had impact. And so part of the reason why we're talking about trauma and understanding it is so that we can understand when we notice it in ourselves, and that will help us then to notice it in our children, and then be able to know how to parent them effectively. Does this make sense to everyone? Okay, so let's talk about the brain, because the brain is an amazing structure here. So when we look at the brain, and again, I think I mentioned I'm not a brain scientist, but it is important to understand. So the brain develops from the bottom up. So the brain stem is that reptilian part of the brain. So like the autonomic functions, like the heart rate, blood pressure, body temperature. When you stress out and something happens, you don't go, oh, heart, go faster, or, oh, I think I should sweat right now. No, it just happens automatically. The limbic system is in the middle there, and that's where we have the fight or flight emotional regulation and the memories. This is also where we have freeze. And then, even when we were talking about like grabbing all the toilet paper, that was also a stress response, just like fight or flight. And then we have the prefrontal cortex, which is the most complex, and so it builds off each other. The prefrontal cortex, that's where you get your abstract thought, your logic, your factual memory, your planning, your ability to inhibit action, empathy, insight, impulse control, all of those things. So keep that in mind. But before we get there, this is something that you can learn to use yourself so that you can also share this with your kids. And it's really talking about us. Oh, I forgot to put his name down. Siegel, Steven Siegel. I'm trying to remember the name who created this.
Dan
Dan
Siegel.
Siegel, thank you, Dan Siegel. I this is amazing. I use this all the time. And again, when we think about the brain, we just saw it again. So this right here would be the brain stem, right? And then right here, think of this thumb as being the limbic system. And then up here is the frontal cortex. And when you're regulated, your brain looks like this. Very similar, maybe. The problem is, and we're going to talk about this soon, our reaction to stress and trauma can impact who's running the show. So when you're regulated, you have, this is what's happening. And if you've seen Inside Out, the movie, you can like think about like all the different emotions hijacking basically the control center. Well, this is just like, this is calm. This is like, I got it going on. And then we'll get to that in a second. So the brain is built over time. So all of the experience you see at birth, there's some connections, but it really happens over time. And look at the difference just in the 6 years of that difference. And at that time, you got to think all of the experiences, good and bad, are being absorbed by the baby. They don't know what they need and what they don't need, so they take everything. Okay. And the more experiences and the more opportunities they have, and the more connection they have, and all of that, the more connections they're going to have in their brain. And then another thing that happens is in the teenage years, then we start to go, what do we need? Because this is a lot. So what do we need? Oh, you haven't played piano in 5 years. Well, let's go ahead and snap that because we don't need that anymore. Oh, you really like this sports. Okay, so we'll go ahead and keep that. Oh, you like this too. Okay, we'll keep that, but I haven't, let's snip this and snip that. And so you can see how over time it becomes more like this is like trying to figure out who they are, what they're interested in. And it starts to get more concise in what their focus is going to be. Which can also impact how they respond. We talk a lot about teenagers and the hormones, but we don't hear a lot of times that a lot of the changes we're experiencing with teenagers has also a lot to do with what's happening in their brains. Does this surprise anyone looking at this?
I'm waiting on the chat, but I haven't seen any chat so far. But no, I mean,
Okay. You can
I think
also
it's interesting to
respond.
see how to think about it. So it's
You
really
can
helpful.
also you can also respond by like doing a check. Like I think there's like a response button. You don't have to write in the chat.
And it's coming to life. So now I'm saying no. People are not surprised by this.
Okay.
Teenagers
Okay.
are, yep.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about attachment. And attachment is the emotional bond that forms between an infant and his or her caregiver. So it can be any caregiver, but like a consistent caregiver. It is the cornerstone to supporting healthy brain development. And having a secure attachment with a caregiver is critical to supporting healthy brain development. So just understanding that importance, and then, your role in that as caregivers, depending on when you have the child in your home. So understanding that even when there are times where maybe there was some disruption to attachment, the fact that you are there now is such a huge benefit to the children that you're taking care of. But also recognizing that with early challenges in attachment, that there may be some things that will come up that you will see. That's why if you think even children that have been adopted, even like in as a baby, or there are things that sometimes can come up that had nothing to do with with the parent connection. So it is something that is important, but it's important at every stage, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Um, it's provides an infant with the first coping system. And whoops, I don't know what happened there. Neuroscientists believe that attachment is such a primal need that there are networks of neurons in the brain dedicated to setting it in motion in the first place, and it releases the good feeling hormone oxytocin. So just really recognizing that attachment is a really big part of the brain development. And so let's talk about the stress response. So the stress response is our body's reaction to a stressful situation. So remember when I was saying that this is regulated, you guys are like feeling good, calm. If a stimuli comes up from your five senses, it is immediately sent to the brain, and your brain's number one job is to keep you safe. So if it senses that it is in danger, it is going to move quickly. It's going to move a lot quicker. Your survival brain, which is this part, is going to move a lot quicker than your thinking part of your brain. And that's why a lot of times you react. And then you look around after a bit and go, okay, wait, no, actually, that wasn't a snake. That was a stick. Okay, I'm okay. And then you're able to like calm down. But in the moment, and I'm using me as an example, I'm trying to get better about snakes. But if I still see something that looks like a snake, I react. I have the, right? I can't get my thoughts. I'm like ready to like run, fight, whatever it is, until I realize, oh, it's a stick. There have been times where it has not been a stick. It has actually been a snake. And then I respond accordingly. No snakes were injured in any of the makings of these stories. And the reason why we have this happen is because again, we were made for survival. So let's take it, if we were out in the forest, gathering up wood, let's say, and we ran into a bear. Automatically, we would know it was danger. We would flip. So the cognitive part would no longer be in charge. The survival part of the brain, the limbic system, would be in charge. And it would be saying, okay, we either fight, flight, freeze, play dead, run, or fight this bear. And what happens at that time is we don't want to be in our thinking part of the brain to be able to say, I wonder if it's nice. No, you have to respond quickly. And the problem with this, though, is that depending on things that have happened to us, even like think about like scents and sounds can remind us of past traumas and things that maybe the body takes as like times when we weren't safe. You could have the same reaction even though there's no bear. And so in those cases, there's two ways to be able to help regulate the system to get back to regulation again. And that's either top down or bottom up. And we'll talk more about that later. So let's look at what happens in the body. Constant activation of the stress response that I just explained. This is what it's going to look like. Look at how lit up it is in that stress response. Living in toxic stress can cause the stress response system to become set on high alert. So think of it like a super highway to just being reactive. So if you think of, I hear this a lot when I talk about parenting, where they say they went from 0 to 100 just like that. It's the super highway to flipping your lid. You were regulated and then you weren't. How many of you can relate to this? I can't see any responses,
I'm
so
getting
I'm
some
gonna.
virtual nods. I know it's hard when you can't
Okay,
see. Yeah, I'm getting
okay,
I'm getting some
can't.
thumbs up, some nods. Yeah,
Yeah, I
I'm
can't.
getting some big thumbs up. Yep.
Okay, okay. Um, so let's look at this. This is a healthy brain, and it says an abused brain. But I just want, when we're thinking about everything I've talked about with how the brain, um, how it grows, how experiences and connection and attachment can really build the brain, and how different parts that are used more can get even more connections. And then we look at the one on the left, and if you look at what is lit up, and the red is where it's really lit up. And you can see there's more connections. The red on the top, that frontal lobe, the cortex is really like has a solid foundation. They're still on the bottom, in the survival brain part, it's still there, but we need it to be there because that is how we survive. But you can see that there's a lot more connections throughout the brain. When you look at the brain on the right, you can see, well, let's see, what are some things that you notice? You can put that in the chat.
While the chat's kind of getting warmed up, you're just seeing kind of that absence of activity. It's just like, how are people kind of able to think? And then somebody else was talking about just decreased ability for neurons to connect.
hmm What is really lit up the most on the brain on the right?
It's like kind of that back end, kind of that,
That's the survival brain.
yeah,
That's
lizard
that
brain. Yep.
reaction. Yeah. So when you're looking at the difference between the two brains, depending on the situation, depending on, you know, we have, when we look at trauma, we have to also look at, there's lots of things that were positive that happened as well. We have negative and positive experiences. We have moments of connection. We have moments where we didn't connect. So there's, but overall, if they had more experiences where they felt like they weren't safe, or they didn't get the connection that they needed and the safety that they needed, this is what can end up happening in the brain. So looking at, the kids that we're working with, to just recognize that sometimes what you see as like a reaction, now you can see maybe this is one of the reasons that this is going on. And there's hope. There is ways to build the connections in the brain to be able to help ease, that quick pathway straight to being reactive and flipping your lid. There are ways to slow that down. And that's why we have to parent in a different way. When we are looking at the brains are totally different, right? And so our approach has to be different. And I know that I have heard this a lot, and I understand, I have worked a lot with kinship providers and have said, well, I I parented my kids, or they were fine, or this is how I was raised. Um, we have to look at it just a little bit different. And it may feel uncomfortable, some of the different approaches, but it can also make a big difference. So let's look a little bit. So there are different ways to react when we are tuned up. So this is hyperarousal. So think, I have it in the red. Um, this is like high resting heart rate, behavioral explosive, exaggerated response. It's like, when you flip your lid, I'm sure we've all experienced that, where we've experienced it ourselves, where you're seeing red, right? Where you, for whatever reason is going on, and you get super upset, and it's almost like you lose your ability to think. And And this is the reason why this is true. Because if you flip your lid, and I want everyone to look at my hand, if you flip your lid, this is what happens. We already know this is in charge, but guess what is offline? Your thinking, your words, your empathy, your impulse control, your all of the things that keep us, so think about when you've been upset, like really upset, and you've said or done something that you're like, oh, it's like it was a different person. Think about kids where they're like, when they're calm again, it's like, oh, there he is, or up there she is. They're back. There's a reason because they're not in this part of their brain anymore. Um, Dysregulated, poor memory and focus. And again, this is your thinking, cognitive part of your brain. It makes sense if you're not there that you would have a difficult time remembering. Frequently get labeled as ADHD, conduct disorder, opposition defiant disorder, anger management problems. Sometimes these are accurate, but sometimes what we're talking about is we're talking about trauma and being able to help them get regulated. And I would just in this moment think about your own reactions. This is not a judgment. Part of our job, part of my job, what I do not only as a professional, but as a mother, is to look at my reaction to things. And it starts with self, and then being able to, one, then be able to see it in others, notice our own regulation to be able to help our kids. Picture like, I think about times when I got dysregulated and I have all this life experience that can show me it's okay. I've done hard things. It'll be fine. I'm a good person. But, kids, they only have limited life experience. So we really have to help them through this. So let's look at hypoarousal. This is inattentive. A lot of times they lose, they may not be noticed in school for the versus hyperarousal. Hyperarousal is like acts up in class, throws the table, gets upset. This could be the kid in the back who's like has the hood over their head or lack of focus, poor memory. Remember, they're still dysregulated. They're just going inward. So instead of the outward explosion, they're going inward. So slow processing can look very flat, dull, non-confrontational, often poor at math. So think about, why do you think they would be poor at math?
It's hard to kind of organize your thoughts because you need to be very like linear for math and kind of organize yourself. And
Math
yeah,
is very foundational
yeah.
and it grows, it builds on itself. So if you are there and it looks like you're paying attention, but then you miss part of it, you come back and go, oh, wait, what? What are we doing? And then you try, but you miss something. It's really hard to connect the dots if you're missing a piece. And so then you keep trying, but if you keep missing little bits and pieces, think of like Swiss cheese of math, then all of a sudden, what are you going to start saying? Oh, I'm bad at math. Oh, I'm not very smart. And I will tell you, this was my experience. I did not know that this was actually what was going on in my own life. So I didn't go to college, and I'm just sharing this to be vulnerable and transparent. I didn't go to college till I was 35 because I didn't think I was smart enough. And what I realized was I missed parts of that whole thing of building on math. So really recognizing that, because guess what? I was the quiet one in the back room. Believe it or not, I was the quiet one. So frequently get labeled as ADHD, depressed, or bipolar. Again, I did this training years ago for teachers, and they said, oh my goodness, there's so many kids that just kind of like are there. They don't do very well. They're not acting up though. So we don't really recognize that they could be actually struggling. So just recognizing that is a reaction as well. So let's look at how this impacts the body. So when we look at how trauma impacts the body, it impacts our sensory experience. So we're all sensory seekers and avoiders. So, like for me, how are we doing on time? Okay. I love the natural light, but like where I work, I don't have windows, and so I have to turn one of the lights off because, believe it or not, if it's too bright, I can't hear. I can't pay attention. If people are talking, it's too much. Like I get really, I just know that about myself. I didn't for a long time though. Think about some of the things for you. And then think about the kids that you're working with. Think about like, oh, I don't like how this feels on my body. I don't like that tag. Ugh. Oh, you're too close to me. Or I'm breaking the crayons because I don't have a good sensory for like how hard I'm pushing. Or I don't want touch. Or I want so much touch. I can't stand that. It smells really weird. Or bring it on. I want, think about all the different things. Think about like kids who are always swinging or needing to like, climb high things or rough house where there's others that are like, no, thank you. No, thank you. All the things. I don't want my hands dirty or get me in there. I want to just feel everything. This is all part of the processing. And think about if the senses are what can help us, whether or not to know if we're in danger or not. And that can sometimes be impacted by trauma. Imagine how that could be a barrier to being able to be regulated. So I could be in a classroom, picture what I just described, and it's bright. There's all sorts of things all over the walls. People are talking, all the kids are talking, and I'm supposed to sit still and pay attention. Can you imagine? Picture now your kids, picture yourself. In fact, I would say I've been doing a lot of talking. Everyone should take a drink of water, take a nice deep breath because it's a lot of information and our bodies need to be able to be like, okay, what do I need to be calm, to be relaxed? And a lot of times we just push through. We expect a lot of ourselves and our kids. So looking at beliefs about self, our thoughts are powerful. We know this. We carry and back to, again, about the wounds that we don't see. It can come into the form of how we think about ourselves. And again, remember, I didn't go to college till I was 35 because I didn't think I was smart enough. That was the messaging that I received instead of, oh, you just had maybe some sensory things. There were some things that happened in your childhood that, that impacted your ability to stay regulated, those kinds of things. Developing an early caregiver relationship, letting them know you are loved, you are special, you are the most important thing. Not all kids hear that. And you may say, they may, it's not just I love you, but like different things that can occur. Some kids, they will think everything is about them, because children are naturally egocentric. So when bad things happen in the world, they often believe they are the cause of those events. So you could say, I love you, I love you, I love you. If you are grumpy, they're going to be like, oh, they're mad at me. Oh, there's something to do with me. And they can hear in their messaging, you are a pain, you are in the way, you are bad, it is all your fault. And so we really, whether we have given that messaging or not, we really need to like circle back and see what they're actually carrying. When I worked with kids that were in foster care, we talked a lot about the invisible suitcase. And it's basically like this suitcase that they carry around of beliefs about themselves, about the people around them, based on their limited life experience. And so we need, and it's invisible. A lot of times they don't even know that they're carrying it. And so as caregivers, to recognize it's not about you. It not very likely is not about you at all. And to be able to like help them unpack it, help them understand what's happening in the brain, what's happening in the body. And then another piece is identity and trauma. So we know that children, adolescents of color are at a higher risk for trauma exposure. Socioeconomic marginalization, we are seeing lots of things play out right now in our world, where what is the messaging being given to our kids about their identity, about their worth. And so just being able to recognize that, um, and and strong cultural identity and community family connections can contribute to strength and resilience. So being able to instead of looking at culture and community and identity as a negative, looking and finding ways to elevate it as a positive, to build how they see themselves. And then again, behavior. We have talked a lot about all of the okay, so the brain, the body, the thoughts. Uh, Children are impacted by trauma in many different ways, and therefore their behavior is often confusing and very difficult to manage. We talked about 0 to 100. It's like, wait, what? I just asked you to clean your room. But we don't know all the little things along the way where they might have already been a little tuned up. And then their ability to cope and survive and have pro-social interactions, where, they are limited on what they know so far. So looking at some other ways of behavior, so chronological age versus developmental age. So they may be, I worked with teenagers, they might have been 14, but they developmentally were more like 8. And to be able to well, you can't do that. He's too big for cuddling or a hug. No, get in there, rock them. If that's what they need, give them what they need. The stress reaction, flipping their lid, recognizing up their lid is flipped. So I gotta make sure that mine isn't, so that I can help them regulate. And just recognizing that, can you imagine their little body flipping and going, I don't know what's happening right now. And being able to help them. Attachment struggles, fear in relationships, especially if they've had a lot of different relationships. I want to love you. I want to trust you. I want to connect with you, but I have been hurt before, or I have lost someone before. And so it's scary to connect with you, because what if you do the same thing? Or I have connected with people that haven't always been safe. So sometimes they're safe and sometimes they're not. So there
And
is
we're
that.
in our last minute, Michelle, so I just want to give you a heads up.
Oh, okay. And then, of course, we talked about sensory integration. This was actually where I wanted to stop. So any questions, thoughts? Because the next
And
part
we
will
may
be
have to
about
come
what we
back to
do.
it this afternoon, but we do have a question to maybe come back to. At what point in time age does it become too late to alter that survival brain mode, if ever? But we may have to come back.
Never,
Maybe we can stay tuned on that
never,
and come
nope,
back after the break.
never, never. It's never too late.
There you go. There's your answer.
It's never too late. It'll take longer. It'll be harder, but it's never too late.
Awesome.
All
Well,
right. So I
thank
hope to
you.
see all of you.
Oh yeah, thank you
Take
so
care of
much, Michelle. This has
yourselves.
been awesome. And we will see you back here at 1:45 for part 2 of this session today. And again, we are honored to have you here. Thank you so much.